Good morning, and it's Thursday morning again. Another lovely Thursday morning, and good morning to Vanita. Vanita, good morning.
Good morning, Jan. Good morning, listeners. I hope you're all well and looking forward to Christmas.
That's why I put on this brightly
You,
colored
you, you,
shirt.
do you know what, Jan? I was looking through your trailer when you start, and I always see that you and Mariska color code, and I should have probably talked to you about what to put on. So,
Sorry, I didn't relay the message correctly, so
no,
that's
no, you
my fault.
didn't. You didn't. Yeah.
All right, 2023 was an interesting year.
Yes. Lots of changes, Jan. As you know, we've got a new immigration minister, Erica Stanford, which everybody's probably was hoping for. So that's a bonus. But there's been no big announcements so far because they're in their first 100 days of getting the government going and so on. So I think we're going to be looking at some interesting changes. But they have indicated that they want to make some changes, and I think they're very positive changes for a lot of people. And pretty much they talk about five changes that they're willing to or wanting to do.
Okay.
Um, and I
And
think
so just jump in here. When will these changes take effect if they
Uh,
start them?
it's hard to say because some things would actually be policy changes. So usually they go through to the policymakers of INZ, and they sit with the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment.
Okay.
So usually they've got to do a whole lot of work making sure everything's correct according to the immigration law and so on. And then they put that into, and then they make the announcements and put that into policy. So I would say that Erica's very likely not to do snap decision making. She's going to be working through very thought out policies and making sure that they have looked at the policies long term and they're not just short term changes that we've had in the
So
last.
we've seen the end of stupid decisions.
Oh, yes, yes, because it's always a what the moment, honestly, with the industry, and, it's just crazy. So, some good news is that they're looking at a 5-year renewable parent visa. Now, the caveat will be that the parents of these visas will need to actually hold healthcare and cover their own healthcare costs. So they'll
Okay.
introduce a levy for that. Now, I can't tell you, for instance, would they have to leave after a certain time? Because right now we have the parent visa or parent grandparent visa that allows parents and grandparents to stay for 6 months in 3 years, 6 months in each of the 3 years. And they've got to be out for 6 months and come back in, and they can do this, 18 months in, 18 months out. So I can't tell you about that and how that will look like. They're also, like with the general visitor visa, usually your maximum stay is 9 months with 9 months out of the country. So maybe, it will definitely be a multiple entry visa for parents. The thought behind it is that they want parents to be able to support the children that are living here or grandchildren, so that they can the families that are living here can contribute to the economy. So that's the thought processes behind it. So introducing the caveat of having your own health insurance would mean that you're not a burden on the health system.
But
So
this visa, do you think that will allow that parent to work here?
Um, I don't know. My thinking is I doubt that
Okay.
because that would be taking jobs away from those New Zealanders that could be in those roles.
Right.
But it would allow those parents to provide childcare and support to their grandchildren and so on without having all these things around us about bona fides and so on. That's what I'm thinking. So that's one big change, and I think it's going to be very welcome news. And I'm thinking that they may do this quite quickly because looking at the policies that are there, it's not going to be major changes. It's just going to be do your own healthcare, probably do your health and character when you do this visa, and allowing you to come and go as you please within 5 years with probably no length of stay, but that's just a guess.
Yeah. Okay.
They're also talking about removing the median wage. So right now, median wage is sitting at 29.66 per hour, and that's for all skilled visas. So, for instance, right now, the most skilled visa is your accredited employer work visa. There's still the essential skills work visas and so on that are hanging around. but they're looking at removing it and probably introducing a more reasonable sort of wage threshold as such. Because the market's actually softening quite a bit. So you're not seeing employers being able to pay higher hourly rates and so on. Because when we opened the borders, it was a huge demand to get migrant workers. So those migrant workers could actually dictate what their hourly rate could be. But now employers are sort of shying away from it and going, no, we can't offer you those higher rates. So
this medium wage group or the new introduction will be lower than what it is now.
I can't tell you because we don't know how they would base that on, because right now we use Statistics New Zealand to work out those. So that's the other one. And I'll talk about the new median wage that's coming through in February. The next one that they talk about is making it easier for family members of skilled visas to obtain work rights. Now, as we know, partners' work rights have been removed unless you meet a high income thresholds, you're on the green list, or, you know, with tier 1 or tier 2 occupations. And it's sort of deterred a lot of skilled people from coming to New Zealand because their partners can't work and so on. So they're looking at actually removing that and giving them the work rights again. So if you look at it, it'll be a quick win if they do it within 100 days. So hopefully, fingers crossed that they would do that.
Yeah.
And
it will mean a lot for our economy.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And sorry if I call you bloodsuckers, but currently there are bloodsuckers. They are here. We have to pay for them on their health and whatever else is wrong with them, but they aren't allowed to work. I mean, I think this is probably one of the most stupid decisions ever made by any government except the ANC.
Okay. It is, and you know, it's stopping a lot of people from wanting to come because the cost of living is really high, Jan. You know, you need 2 people to work, and that will probably coincide very nicely with the 5-year parent visa, where both parents are working, and you could bring your family, like your parents, over. They can stay for 5 years, and, you know, come and go as they please with no caveats or no, you know, having this thing on the head that they've got to leave. You know, which would be really nice. And the other one that they've actually talked about is increasing the cap for the seasonal workers, recognized seasonal employers and schemes. So they want to increase the quota for that. And I know South Africans don't fall under that, but it will actually help.
Guys in those ways.
Sorry?
This is your Kiwi guys and those.
Well, it's more Pacific Islanders Pacific Islands, my apologies, where they have agreements with seasonal workers to come in for a certain amount of time. So they're talking about increasing that and also increasing the quota of how long they can come in. Because if you remember last year, we couldn't bring a lot of them in, and we brought them in too late. We didn't have fruit to pick. Fruit pickers, we didn't have any of that. So that's what they're looking at. So that's the first 100, well, I shouldn't say the first 100 days, but that's what they want to focus on.
Yeah, so it's when we need them, not afterwards.
Yeah.
Oh, Labour was go to learn.
So let's look ahead and let's look at everything positively now, Jan. Okay.
We can at least think it's going to be more positive than it was in the past.
Well, yes. For a lot of people that will be coming in. So the next change that's coming through would be the median wage, which if the government goes ahead with keeping the median wage, that's going to increase in February from $29.66 to $31.61 per hour, which is about $66,000 per annum, around about that. Now, in March 2024, a lot of people are looking forward to a list of 17 trades-based occupations going onto the green list. Okay. Now, there is a caveat on that, which has not been released. And I think once we know about the median wage and so on, then we would know what that 17 occupations will be required to hold. Because believe me, the floodgates are not going to be open. There's currently a caveat saying that there's a wage threshold on that, and the government hasn't released what that wage threshold is. So right now, for our roles that are below or trades-based roles, if you look at the way they can get residents on the 6 points, they can only get residents earning 1.5 of median wage.
Okay.
So with the 17 roles that are coming in, there's going to be a wage threshold introduced on it to make sure that not everybody can go through for residents, and it's only going to be those people that meet the requirements for that.
Do you think that they'll change that 1.5 for residents?
When you're talking about the 6 points, I'm not too sure. I know Eric has indicated that, look, we have very skilled people, but they may not meet your level 7 minimum degree qualification. They may just introduce more sector agreements or have some leniency on certain occupations. I mean, the thinking behind this from the old government was that they would have a lot of those apprentices go into these trades-based roles, so we didn't have a heavy reliance on migrant workers coming in to fill these roles, but that hasn't happened. So we'll have to wait and see, and as I said, it's the policymakers that have to go in and probably revamp. We don't know. So that's coming through. So right now, on the 27th of November, we had a change in the length of time that an AEWV is issued. So we've moved from 3 years to 5 years.
Okay.
So those people that are getting visas now are getting 5-year visas, along with their spouses and their children as well.
What about on the three years? How do they change them to 5 years?
So some people are on 2 years, some people are on 3 years. So what the government has said, or what I should say INZ have said, is 9 months before your visas are expiring, you can put in your application for the balance of the years, or they call it maximum stay. I can't remember the exact name, but it's the maximum continuous stay. So you can do it 9 months before your visa is expiring. So you can apply and get the balance of it. Now, there's some rules around it, is that your medicals are valid for 36 months.
Okay.
And your police certificates are valid for 24 months. So if you, for instance, a person on a 3-year work visa is putting in an application 9 months ahead to ask for the additional 2 years, it's possible that they may need to do new medicals, depending, or they may need to do new police certificates. So that's where those things come in.
That point as well. I mean, the ones they've handed in, they were right there after they came to New Zealand. Now they've been the whole time here. They haven't been back. So they want new ones. It's a bit.
Look, that's what's written in policy now, and I don't know whether they would change it. So the thought behind this whole 5-year AWV is that people would be applying for residence within that time and wouldn't have to go for a further work visa. So that's the thought processes behind that. With regards to the family, though, I am unsure how that's going to work and how you apply for the family's additional stay, the 2 years or 3 years. Yeah. Are there any questions so far, Jan?
So far, no questions. Guys, if you've got questions, please drop them. We'll try and answer all of our difficult questions this morning. So,
yeah. I've still got a few things to cover, and hopefully it will answer some of the questions.
Popping.
Sorry?
Let's carry on until the next questions are there.
No problem. Sorry, the internet's dropping a bit, so you're cutting out a bit, and it could be me, so my apologies. Okay, so what's going to happen for those people that are on the lower, like the sector agreements for hospo and tourism and construction and infrastructure? So those people get paid below median wage. So while they can stay for a maximum period of 5 years, because they're able to renew their visas and get the maximum continuous stay, they are going to have a 12-month stand-down period. So if they don't meet median wage or a different wage that's set at the time, they are going to have to leave the country for 12 months and then they can come back in. So those are the things that you need to consider, in future, because you need to meet the requirements for wage thresholds when you apply for the visa, And at the time of application, and if you're applying for your next visa, whether that's another AUW or whether that's another resident visa, so your employer can pay you $29.66 now and does not need to increase it until maybe 3 years from now, where the wages may be $35 an hour. So that's where your employer needs to change that. So that's what they're expecting on that. There's been huge changes, and I should say more application to false and misleading information. And this is for both the applicants that are applying for their visas as well as employers.
Okay.
So there's now very little leniency on providing incorrect information to immigration on any application. So whether it's accreditation or whether it's a work visa or partner visa or whatever you're applying for. They're actually looking at standardizing the way they're approaching the whole false and misleading policy. And you won't necessarily, if you're offshore, you won't necessarily get an opportunity to respond. They may decline immediately.
Okay.
So that's a big one for people that are doing their own visas and are self-representing and so on.
And this is actually where people have lied intentionally or unintentionally.
Look, there are some leniencies, for instance, like, if you are in a de facto relationship in South Africa, you're still seen as single unless you're married, okay?
Oh.
Whereas in New Zealand, you would tick de facto because you're living with somebody. So those things, if you tick single, that may be overlooked because that's your interpretation of the way you see it. However, there's other bits and pieces, for instance, like you may, like on your residence application, you may say your children are single, have no children of their own, but they've been in a relationship. And if they find this out, that means it's affected. There's other bits and pieces as well, and it actually goes into quite in-depth information on how they're looking at it. And that's something that your advisor or you need to know very, very well. Yeah.
The big thing is, I mean, with any of these type of things, you don't want somebody here that's not truthful already.
Yes, which is correct, yes, because there's people that may lie on their work applications or whatever that may be, so it is correct. So, yeah, so they're just assessing it very in a specific way. Yeah.
And the other thing is, without the help of somebody like you, like an immigration agent, these days it looks like it's only becoming more difficult to get into New Zealand.
It is, but the thing is, though, it is the same around when you look at Australia, you look at Canada and so on. And with Australia, no matter what, they don't even give you a chance. They will just decline and tell you why they've declined. And that's where we're going towards, is that sort of industry standard, or I should say that worldwide standard. So with that false and misleading, it's a huge one for employers, because those employers that hold accreditation, I mean, if you just mess up in one, there's fines now for employers, and because the fines have reduced from like 10,000 to 50,000, it's now reduced from 1,000 to 3,000 per employee. Per case. It's actually very easy for Immigration New Zealand to invoke. And when I say this, I'm talking about like accredited employers employing, for instance, a person on a work visa. They apply for a new visa because their current visa is expiring, and this is an example. And between that time, they're issued with an interim visa, and that interim visa may not have work rights. The employer is supposed to know that. And the thing is, if the employer actually continues employing you and you've got no work rights, one, it's really bad for you because you shouldn't be working. And the other thing is the employers actually breached their accreditation because they've employed somebody with no work rights. The employment law comes into effect, the immigration law comes into effect. And that employer, while they'll get a fine, they can actually be stood down from accreditation for 6 months or and be named and shamed on this list, of non-compliant employers, just for a simple thing like that. So, so it's huge. And the thing is, if an employer loses their accreditation, it means that, like, if your visa is expiring in maybe 2 months' time, they cannot support your visa because the accreditation's gone. So that's huge.
Yeah.
And if they stood down for 6 months and so on, they're stuck pretty much, so that's huge.
Yeah. I've got a question. I've got a few questions now. Sean Langer asking, sorry, I'm just going to read this. I can't put this on the screen. Vanita, I ask a question. Do you think that the immigration process will move away from the new 6-point system? My mate is here, but only has 1 point other than what he is worried about returning back to South Africa.
Look, I don't think they're going to revamp the whole 6-point system because there's a lot of work that's gone into it. What they'll do is very likely add some either sector agreements. It could be like the way we have transport and the care sector agreement, which is reviewed annually. The green list is looked at every 3 years.
Okay.
So they could add occupations to the Tier 2 green list, which gives you a pathway after 2 years to residence. So they'll add probably tweaks to it. They may not get rid of it completely because it's a whole new change.
Somebody just saying, good morning, thanks for keeping us updated. And then another question came in and he asked, are job tokens still taking so long to come through?
Yes.
Why?
Absolutely. Look, I called him because I had tokens lodged on the 17th of October, and I called him on Tuesday, and I said, look, how long is it taking? Because it's taking 6 to 8 weeks. So an employer has to be really, really organized if you need, to come in, and start working and so on. They've got to be doing their advertising way beforehand, lodging that in, and applying for the tokens. So they said to me it's taken 6 to 8 weeks, if not longer, for job tokens. Now, the thing is, though, we've got job changes where we're either moving people from one region to another region or moving them from one job title to another job title, and we're waiting. And this is employers facing this within the company. We're waiting 6 to 8 weeks just for those tokens or longer. And then we've got to do the job change or variation. Now, that variation was taking about 7 working days. It's now taking 16 working days or longer.
Okay.
So that's just one thing. And AEWV is taking about maybe 20 to 30 working days. So that's just to come into, and get everything from 6 to 8 weeks, or longer, the job token, then lodging your visa, you're probably looking at 4 or 5 months before you're actually coming in. So it's very important not to quit your job. Please remain in your job until you get your visa in hand, then serve your notice. And this is even for people on work visas. You serve your 30 days notice or whatever that may be, and then start with your new company.
This is what okay, sorry, I wanted to ask something, but it slipped my mind now. So
you sound like me, but I've got an excuse for that, Jan. It's the age.
Yeah. Oh, what I want to ask is immigration closing down, and when?
Oh yes, they always do. They always do over the stat days. So they usually would close. Probably the last day would be on the 22nd of December. Okay. They do have skeleton staff working, and that will be only for mandatory visas, like, for instance, visitor visas and student visas. And that's for international students wanting to study. They usually, what they do is for advisors, they'll say to you, look, we're going on leave and we're going to defer these applications until when we come back. So that's what they do, and they'll be back on the first working day, official working day after New Year. So that is it the 3rd or the 4th? I'm not too sure.
Or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that's when they'll be back. But again, they won't be back in full steam. They come back probably around, more of them start coming back around the fuller weeks, So, and usually they would defer everything. So if, for instance, you're working for an AEW or you wait for a partner visa, it's likely not going to happen until next year if it hasn't happened now.
Uh, Good morning. On the 482 visa, do we have a 482 visa?
That's Australia.
Sorry, wrong country. Wrong country. That was an interesting one. So, but you
Yeah,
do as well.
I do Australia. There's so many different types of visas, but they have a lot of pathways, Jan. So the good thing is, don't give me that question because I'm not going to answer. But the thing is this: with Australia, it's all right. They have regional visas. They have visas. They have the independent visas, like which is our 6 point system. There's so many different and employer-sponsored visas and so on. So the thing is, you don't even need to meet points, because on the independent visas you have to meet the point system. Whereas if you're sponsored by your employer, you just need to work with them for 2 years and then you can apply for residence.
Okay.
Um, and if you're on a regional visa, you have to be in the region for that period of time, which is 2 years or 3 years, depending on what pathway you've come through to be able to do that. So they've got a lot of different pathways for it, and they've got parent visas that are much more, pretty much in line with what the proposed 5-year visa is.
Okay.
They've got those, and it allows parents so much flexibility, and it allows families to be able to see their parents.
Guys, just remember this is still Australian visas that we're talking about. Just one question about the Australian visas, and I've heard this the other day from somebody. They said it takes extremely long before you get it.
Yes, it does. And why? Because when you start, you've got to do your skills assessment, and you have to have a positive skills assessment. You've got to do your English language as well. Then you apply for your visa, and depending on what type of visa you're applying for. So I get a lot of questions from people that are in New Zealand on residence or permanent residence, and they say to me they want to go over to Australia.
Yep.
Now, just talking about that, and then I'll come back to the why it takes so long. When you're on a resident or permanent resident visa in New Zealand, you cannot just hop across the ditch and be able to be treated as a New Zealand citizen. The bonus is when you're a New Zealand citizen, you can go in there, apply for the 444 visa, and you can work pretty much as an Australian would work. But when you're on a resident or permanent resident visa, you start the process of what you did in New Zealand, you would start again. Medicals, police checks, getting a sponsor or going into the regions or the independent category, it all comes back to zero again. So I would say if you're thinking of going, wait for citizenship.
And the person I spoke to was at that stage already waiting something like 8 months or so.
Yeah. So the skills assessment needs to be done. The English language needs to be done. The skills assessment can take a while as well. And they've got different bodies that introduce different, that assess different skills. Like you've got your trades, you've got your nurses, all the different bodies. So that's one thing. So that will take probably about 8 months or depending how fast they can do it. Once they do that, if you have an offer, if the employer is sponsoring you, then they have to apply for sponsorship and so on. So they have to nominate you, then you go through another process, and then you apply for your visa. So the way Australia works is that you don't do your medicals right up front. You do it in stages, depending on the visa. So they'll say to you, right, we've done this stage now. Yes, go and do your medicals, because the medicals expire.
That's right.
So because they're only valid for 3 months. So you don't do them up front. So this is why it takes long. And if you look at the processing time, sometimes they're between 9 and 17 months. So this is where your age comes into a huge factor, because it's 45 as a cutoff. So if you're like 43 and you're going to be taking this, you're cutting it very, very close. So you need to be applying, like if you're looking at Australia, in your 30s.
And probably do not resign at all from your job if you think you're not going to Australia. So, Vanita, thank you very much. This 30 minutes is actually...
Oh, wow. That was quick, Jan.
Any last words before, this will probably be your last one before Christmas.
Yes. Look, there's no last words from me. I just hope that everybody had an amazing 2023. It's tough out there because a lot of companies are now going through restructures and so on, and I know people are being affected. So I really sincerely hope that, you come through this. And but I wish everybody an amazing festive season, and look forward to 2024.
Yeah. Vanita, and thank you for 2023. We've pressed on your button quite a few times.
It's always a pleasure.
Always came out knowing more than I had known in the past. So, all right, guys and girls, thanks, and once again, thanks to Vanita. If you are on our YouTube channel while listening to this, please click like and subscribe. Presumably, that's the right way to see us in the future as well. So, okay, Vanita, thank you very much. I'm gonna add off, and I'll speak to you soon.